there is actually a science to the stupidity. That's dead wrong. Somebody say, break it down, Pastor, break it down. There's a science to the stupidity, that there's actually an answer to that question. We were immature, and we were with a undeveloped prefrontal cortex. We were immature, and we had an undeveloped prefrontal cortex. Now, what in the world does that mean? The prefrontal cortex is the decision-making part of the brain. And so when you are trying to make a decision and you're weighing out the pros and the cons of an action or something that you're getting ready to do, the prefrontal cortex is where all of that is taking place, the decision-making, what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, why you shouldn't do it, why you should do it. It's undeveloped when we're young boys. And so we come up with an idea, and then it doesn't get all the way processed. And before we process the pros and the cons, we're already soaping up the backyard with the dish soap and getting ready to get in trouble. There is a science to the stupidity. What were you thinking? It's what helps us make decisions. Unfortunately, the prefrontal cortex in boys, although it is thicker than girls, develops and it plateaus much slower than girls. Okay, it develops. Oh, ladies, stop. Just stop. I knew y'all were going, I knew it. It's the science. That's what it is. That's what they show. Now, it's much thicker. I got our back, fellas. It's much thicker, which means that, when it is time and it's fully matured, we are really thinking through things. Even though you think we're not thinking, we're thinking through things in a very deep way. And it's a very, very complex prefrontal, what is it called? Prefrontal cortex. But it plateaus much slower than girls. And so number one, the downsides of the immaturity of boyhood is that we have poor decision making, or we had poor decision making. Number two, we were emotionally immature. The downsides to boyhood immaturity, we were emotionally immature. Now, I can explain the emotional immaturity. You see, adolescent boys have a strong desire, a super strong desire to find their role and their place and position in the pack in the world around them. So they're trying to find their position in the pack of boys, and they're trying to find their positioning in the world itself, trying to find their positioning in the household, and that's a strong innate desire. Where do I fit? What is my role? Where am I? And once they find that role, they want to play it to a T, and that's what they're doing now. The challenge with that is that for one reason or other, as boys, they feel like any emotion threatens the position that they find themselves in. Or that jockeying for position amongst the other boys, or jockeying for position in the household, or jockeying for position in society. Any emotion threatens that positioning. And so as a result, it can be embarrassing, and as a result, they suppress a lot of feelings. You see, sentimental and mushy feelings are embarrassing, and they threaten their jockeying for position amongst the other boys and in society. And so, if they're mushy, or it's a mushy moment, or mom, you come in with a nice wet kiss on their cheek before school, that's embarrassing, and it's mushy, and it might threaten their positioning amongst the group. And so they suppress, even if they like it. Mom, even if he likes it, he's going to suppress the mushy feeling because that just might threaten his positioning amongst the group. And so those sentimental, mushy feelings are embarrassing and avoided at all costs. Excitement is embarrassing and avoided at all costs. Sadness is embarrassing and avoided at all costs. Happiness is embarrassing and avoided at all costs. Every emotion that you can possibly think of as a young boy, it can be seen as embarrassing and avoided at all costs. That's why when you have a preteen, or maybe he's new in his teens, and you're excited about a movie you went to, or you're excited about the park, and you say, how was it? Did you have fun? Oh, it was all right. Whatever. Because if they're excited, then it shows some kind of emotion. And they're not sure if that emotion is going to make them look corny. They're not sure if that mushiness is going to make them look corny. They're not sure if that sadness is going to make them look corny. Why? Because they're jockeying for position amongst the other boys, amongst society, and amongst their household. And so the default is apathy. Yes, it was all right, whatever. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. This is what is taking place, right? And so they are emotionally immature because every emotion is a threat to their positioning in life and in the world and amongst the other boys. Is this making sense to you this morning? Stay with me. We're riding somewhere. Now, as a result, these feelings in boys, all these feelings in boys, they exist, but they are not effectively processed and acknowledged within, and they're cloaked in an emotional default of being glum or too cool for the moment. This is what's happening. Number 3, they have aggression. This is another downside of the immaturity of boys. They have aggression with no focus. Aggression with no focus if you're not careful. This is why we roll down the hill as hard as we can. We throw our bodies against the wall. We throw our bodies against each other. We fight. We roll around. We throw dirt, all this other stuff, because we have aggression, and we're just naturally created with this aggression. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. But when we're young and immature, we don't know what to do with it, which is what leaves so many of you asking our boys the question so many times, especially shout out to all the teachers. You're thinking to yourself, what were you thinking? They have aggression. It's not focused. They can't help themselves. This is one of the downsides of the immaturity of boyhood. Now, as we move forward, God calls all of these signs and patterns of adolescent immaturity to come into order. Somebody say, come into order. They're called to come into order as the Christian boy matures into a Christian man. As the Christian boy. Now, there's no getting around some of this stuff. It's just the process of going from immature to mature. But eventually, the Christian boy will become a Christian man. Now, remember that immature, undeveloped prefrontal cortex? God causes the prefrontal cortex to develop healthy and thick in the mature Christian man. And now we are called to take healthy risks with the pros and cons that have been properly processed. You see, we're still called to take risks. We're still called to put ourselves out there. We're still called to do what the rest of the world may think is crazy, but according to what the Word of God calls us to do, it's not crazy at all. And so we are called as we mature to process things, to get into the Word of God and to process what we are called to do. And think about the pros and cons of every action that we take. This is what the godly, mature Christian man is called to do. Now our prefrontal cortex is developed and we can process things effectively. Now we still have aggression. You're always going to have that aggression. It's called testosterone, and God gave it to you for a reason. You're called to be aggressive, and we're going to talk about why God calls you to be aggressive in a moment. That aggression isn't going anywhere, but as you are mature, when you were immature, your aggression was unfocused. You were running around in the dirt. You were throwing stuff around. You were bouncing around the classroom, all this other stuff. But now you still have that aggression as a mature Christian man, but you're focused. And you're focused on where you need to be aggressive, where you need to attack, and what you need to do and why. And so you pair that with a mature prefrontal cortex. You're making some sound and godly, wise decisions, and you have aggression to match it. And so now when something or someone tries to come into your household or with some nonsense, that aggression kicks in and you know how to act or react. Now when the enemy tries to sneak into your church or tries to sneak into your marriage or tries to sneak into your child's life, that aggression kicks in and you're able to move forward and fight in the spirit or fight with your hands if need be. That aggression is still there. Now you have focused aggression.